All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Kombucha and Jun class. I'm really excited to have you. This class is kind of dear to my heart. I do want to say I can barely see the screen. So if something isn't my screen, I can see, I don't know how to fix that. So if something isn't right, let me pull up the chat here so I can see it. There we go. Okay, so if something isn't right, if somebody would just put in the chat that maybe I need to move my camera or something so that you can see things, because I don't know how to make it so I can see myself. So, man, there's a lot of people here today. This is really exciting. I'm so glad. That's really fun. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get started really quick. My name is Tandy Hogate. If I am trying to keep track of muting everyone, but I want to say, it looks like everybody's muted now. I do want to say, if you have a question, please don't hesitate to ask. So go ahead and either put your question in the chat, or you can just unmute and ask. I don't mind a bit. So whichever is easiest, because I want to make sure that I answer your questions. So I'm glad to have so many of you here. That's really fun. So today we're going to be talking about, well, my name is Tandy Hogate. Oops, let me try and make sure everyone's muted. My name is Tandy Hogate, and my husband and I own Common Ground Alaska Farm. A lot of you probably already know that. We call ourselves a teaching farm that feeds Alaskans. That kind of sums up what we do. So we have the U-Pick side, that's where we get to feed people, right? And then we also do classes. We have our Alaska Homestead Expo that's coming up that we're really excited about, that is going to just have tons and tons of workshops. And then we also do individual, longer classes. Like, for instance, I do have a fermenting class coming up on the 17th, I think, a week from Saturday. So, and it's a full fermenting class. But today we're going to talk about making Kombucha and Jun. And even if you've already made, well, first I have a question. You can just answer in the chat while I'm talking for a minute. But I want to know the answer to two things. Number one, have you ever tried to make kombucha before and had a SCOBY and maybe killed the SCOBY? And there's no shame, because if most, I would say 90% or even higher of people who have ever had a kombucha SCOBY have killed the kombucha SCOBY. So there's no shame in that. So I'm just curious how many people have tried it before. And I want to know if you like kombucha. So a lot of people don't really prefer the taste of kombucha, whether they've only had store-bought or if they've had homemade kombucha. So if you have the ability to put that in the chat, I would love to hear your thoughts just on kombucha. Now, I will tell you a little bit about my kombucha / Jun experience. I think I use this term in my sourdough class too. I'm a serial killer. So I have killed more than one SCOBY, and really kind of was habitually killing SCOBYs for a long time. And I realized I was way overcomplicating the whole process. So okay, let me look back at the chat really quick. Rebecca, I grew a SCOBY and made basic kombucha, but couldn't figure out how to flavor it. Oh, to make it drinkable. We're going to talk about that today. Emma, never made it, never tried it. Never tried to make it, never tried homemade, but I love it. From Corrine. Kristen, I've made kombucha a few times from scratch, but the SCOBY I've grown has been gotten pretty pathetic. That happens. Mike says, I've tried it. I like the health benefits, but this was years ago. Susan, I haven't tried making it, but enjoy the taste of kombucha. And then Callie, I'm sorry, I'm kind of far away from my screen. I love the taste of kombucha. I've been wondering if you could make it with herbal teas instead of black tea. Oh gosh, these are the best questions. I love it. Okay, perfect. Okay. So let me just tell you a little bit about when I first started making it. I just kept it kept not working out. So I'd either not do the tea right itself, or I'd make the tea and then it would sit on the counter for way too long and it would over ferment and I'd have to throw it out, and then the SCOBY would eventually go bad and it just wasn't working well. This was with kombucha. And several years ago, and well, here's the thing. Here's what I know now. I was way overcomplicating the process. Um, and I kept kind of having to relearn and reteach myself the process it because I kept not getting it right, if that makes sense. So, oops. Wow, more people coming in. Just a sec. I just have to make sure as people come in that they're muted. Okay. Looks like we're good. Okay. Oop. Okay, hold on. Wow. All right. So, once I realized that I was overcomplicating it and we could simplify it, then it just made things go so much better. So now I have a really good routine and it's simple and it works fabulous. But I will say that I don't really, I like kombucha fine, but it isn't my favorite drink. So that was part of the reason that maybe we didn't, part of the reason that maybe I wasn't super successful with kombucha was because I wasn't creating something that I loved the flavor of. And that my family really loved. And I think that had a lot to do with it. So one year we were in Oregon visiting family and I went to a farmer's market and they had something called Jun. And I just got a bottle of it just to try it for fun. And holy moly, I was blown away. So they referred to it, they actually called it Jun kombucha, but it wasn't. It was 100% Jun. And here is the difference. So kombucha is made, they're made exactly the same, and you're going to learn how to make both of them today. But kombucha is made with, sorry, I'm trying to make sure everyone stays muted. Kombucha is made with black tea and it's made with sugar. So those are it's that simple, and a kombucha SCOBY and you're good to go. Jun is made exactly the same, but it's made with green tea, so it has way less caffeine, and it's made with honey. So, which we just prefer honey over sugar as a sweetener. So for that reason, I just was so blown away by the flavor. Jun is much more, it's lighter in flavor. I think it's more refreshing, but it has a much less, it's very effervescent. And it has, I'm trying to I had a word for it, but it's just, it's just lighter in flavor. And so I liked it so much that when I came back, I wanted to try and make some. So I looked into how to make the SCOBY for that, which I'd never made a SCOBY before. But, and I found out that if I could get a bottle of it somewhere, then I could make the SCOBY from a little bit of the juice. And so, actually a friend of mine had started a Jun SCOBY and she gave me part of it, but it didn't do well. So, so I got some Jun at the grocery store and they have it at Fred Meyer, or they did have it at Fred Meyer. And this was a couple of years ago. And so I was able to make a SCOBY, which is the coolest thing ever to make this thing. So so now I'm able to make Jun. So let's see, I just want to make sure I want to go through the process of it, but I want to kind of show you some things first. So first I want to show you what this SCOBY looks like. And I did just wash my hands. So I'm going to hold it up in front of the camera and it's kind of weird looking, but this girl she's getting quite a bit older now. She started out so tiny and now she's
the kombucha clot.
What was that? I can't mute anyone right now, but if you're oh, Jun is spelled Jun, like the month minus the E. I'm just trying to let it finish dripping. So this is my kombucha SCOBY right here. Here she is. Here's the top. You can see she's pretty thick. She's ready to be split actually. And then here's the bottom of it. And it's some people call it a mother, some people say it's a mushroom. But what she does is she actually will, excuse me, I'm going to wipe off my hands. She actually will cover the top of your container. It takes a little while to get them to grow, but she will cover the top of your container, and her job is to protect whatever's inside. So she keeps all the sediment, any debris or anything off of there, but your job is to keep her nice and clean. So and she'll just continue. If she's happy, she'll just keep having babies, and it's pretty fun. And you can share with people, and you just can get this. It's called a SCOBY hotel, where you'll have multiple layers. I've grown her to the point where we just started making 1.5 gallons, but I'm actually getting ready to split her in half, and so she'll make 2.5 gallons. Part of her will go in a 1 gallon container, and the other half will go in a gallon, and my 1.5 gallon jug that I use here currently. So you can get to the point where you're making quite a bit of drink. And if you think about it, it's so inexpensive to make. Another thing that I really, really love about both Kombucha and Jun is that you can flavor them with berries and things from your garden. And so, our Jun is typically totally Alaska flavored. Here's what I do. I have a steam juicer. So I have, here is a jar that I canned of black currant juice. I just put a bunch of black currants in my steam juicer. I juiced them for, I think, an hour. This was the juice that was left over. Now, here's a mistake that I made. I didn't sweeten these ahead of time because I just wasn't sure how I was going to use them. And this year I've definitely learned exactly how we're going to use them. So I didn't sweeten these ahead of time. Next year I will put the sugar or the honey that these are going to be sweetened with in the jar in the steam juicer when I'm making the juice, because then I can pull these right off the shelf and use them. What I have to do now, because this isn't sweetened, when you do, this is for your second ferment. When you do your second ferment, which is when you flavor it, you have to have some sugar in there or it's not going to get fizzy. So you have to make sure and sugar and honey both work the same. So you're more than welcome to use honey. So that's the one change that I would make, is next year these will be sweetened in the jar, because otherwise you have to heat them up. And then of course, if you heat them up, you have to cool them back down. You have to cool them back down, and it just makes the process take longer. But here's some black currant. Here is some cherry juice. We had a bad cherry year, so we juiced most of our cherries because most of them weren't fit for making into pie filling or anything. I actually ordered some Tom Cord grapes, they're a Thompson Concord mix. I ordered a couple cases of them because it makes the best juice, and canned up that juice. And I'll tell you, the Jun made from the grape juice tastes like grape soda. It's so good. It would be so good over ice cream. I keep thinking, oh, we need to make a float out of this. It's so yummy. So those are ways that you can use your Alaska berries. The other thing I have is I got some honeyberries out of the freezer. You could just heat up some honeyberries with some sugar, and I'm gonna need a class on, let me tell you, that steam juicer is worth its weight in gold. I'll definitely talk about it. But I'll just take some berries, put just the tiniest bit of water in them, because they'll eventually juice up. I just need them to not stick while they're waiting, and some sugar, and I'll then we have to run that through a colander to get all the bits out, and the chickens love the bits. And then you've got honeyberry juice. So any berry that you have on your place, you can turn into juice and flavor your kombucha and your Jun, which is just awesome. It's, for one thing, that keeps the costs down so much. Imagine, we haven't bought soda pop in a long time, but imagine not having to buy any of that, and you just keep giving it a little bit of sugar, a little bit of honey, and you're good to go. Another tip I want to say is I actually don't use Alaska grown honey for my Jun because it takes a lot. And so I get my honey from Azure Standard. I know it's a raw honey. I know it's an American product. I'm really careful about the honey that we get because so much of it is fraudulent essentially. So I do source my honey carefully, but I don't use the Alaska grown stuff just because it would no longer be cost effective. So that's one thing we do. All right. So I wanted to talk for just a second before we actually make the drink. I want to talk about the benefits of it. I'm going to read this because it's easier to read it so I don't mess up. So Jun, it has a strong probiotic, and the health benefits include it promotes proper digestion. It increases the diversity of your microbiota, aiding in the absorption of food, and it can help strengthen your immune system. It's been shown to help with stomach discomfort and bloating, and it can be used as a digestive aid with meals to help break down food. Now, if you've attended any of my sourdough classes, then you know that I'm kind of a big proponent of digestion. So I want to just talk for just a second about that because our digestion is so messed up, partly because of how we eat. So one of the beautiful things about sourdough bread is that you actually have to chew it. What happens when you chew your bread, it's called it has chew. And when you're chewing it, what happens is it signals your brain and it says, ooh, she's chewing. We better tell the stomach to get prepared for some food. So the acids kind of ramp up in your stomach. And so by the time you swallow that bread, your stomach's already ramped things up and gotten the acid ready to start the digestion process. If you eat a chicken nugget, maybe that takes like one chomp and a swallow, or even most processed foods, there's not a lot of chew to them. And so a lot of people, that is what is causing a lot of the digestive issues, is just simply because we're not chewing. And it's not a matter of the food being too big or whatever when it hits the stomach. It's a matter of your head saying, well, wait, was she actually chewing food? Or was she just, biting something and now she's done, when really, and then we have all this food invade our stomach before our stomach is ready, and then your acids aren't there. And so it just, causes digestive issues. So by drinking some Jun before you eat, it can help increase that. So, and it just kind of gives you that head start. Kombucha is also a probiotic. They're basically the same thing. They're made with the same process. They're just made with a couple different ingredients. But so it's a probiotic, so it can improve your gut health. And it also has antioxidants, which is our defense against free radicals. So definitely these are a healthy, healthy drink. And I'm telling you, they're so good. And both of them, when they're homemade, it's a lot different. The other thing is when you buy, now my store-bought Jun, well, it wasn't really bought at a store. I bought it at a farmer's market. But it was in a can. The Jun that I got was so good. And it did taste a lot like what I make, but kombucha doesn't taste the same. The stuff you buy at the store, I think, tastes completely different than the kombucha that you're going to make. The other thing that's nice is you get to choose how strong it is. So if you want a kombucha that maybe isn't quite as strong, you just simply ferment it for less time in your initial ferment, and that's going to make all the difference. So we're going to talk about the processes in a second, but I do want to say Kombucha and Jun do not use the same SCOBY. So if you have a kombucha SCOBY, they're not interchangeable. You can convert a kombucha SCOBY to Jun. I'm not sure how to do it, but there's articles online where you can learn how to do that. I believe that I used to think that I was the only one with a Jun SCOBY in the state, but I think Gail is here, Gail Meister, and she took just the tiniest little baby of a SCOBY of one of my kombuchas and took it home. And I don't know how it's doing. I saw her briefly at the sourdough class, but it was just for a second and I didn't get to ask, but I hope hers is doing well. So maybe there's only a couple. So one thing I know is that people might be interested in a SCOBY, and I am more than happy to share. It just takes a little while to get these things to grow. So just keep asking. Eventually I'll have enough to share it with people. But kombucha SCOBYs you can find just about everywhere. So, okay. Does anyone have any questions before I show you how to actually make this? I've given you kind of a lot of information, and I wanted to give you all the information in advance because oh, Gail still has her. Good. I'm glad she's still alive. Gail, I have to know, did you name her? My SCOBY's name is Beatrice. She's named after my grandma. So, I wanted to show you how we make it all at once because I want you to see how fast and how simple it is. And I think the most important thing, it's just like keeping your sourdough starter alive. You just need a routine and a system. And there are routines and systems that maybe aren't good, but for the most part, if you find what works for you, then you can just keep your SCOBY going. She'll keep growing. And, now I've given Gail one. Now Gail and I both will eventually have some to share. And it just kind of keeps growing like that. Pretty soon, the Jun SCOBYs will be just as prolific as the kombucha one. I hope, I think. Okay, so one of the questions back here was, can you make it with herb tea? You cannot make it with herb tea that I am aware of, but you can make it with green tea. I've never tried it with herb tea. That would be a question I'd have to Google. But I do know that green tea has very little caffeine. I actually am not supposed to have any caffeine at all. And I do drink some of this and I haven't had an issue. I don't know how much caffeine is in it, but I don't, drink coffee or anything, and I haven't had any issues. So, if green tea is okay, the amount that's in green tea, then that's as close as I know of to get. It doesn't matter if it's a flavored green tea. If you have, I have a green and pomegranate tea that I use sometimes, and it just kind of flavors that initial ferment a little bit. That's just kind of fun. But all right. So I want you to remember that these are interchangeable. So my process would be the same whether I had a kombucha SCOBY or a Jun SCOBY. So the only thing that's going to be different is a little bit of the timing. So here's what I'm going to do. I have my container and it's all nice and clean. You do want to make sure that your container is really clean every time. Now, when I made my last batch that I did, that I'll show you what I did with the second ferment in a minute, I actually took my SCOBY out and I put her in a bowl I put her in with extra juice because I thought I was going to split her this time, but then I decided to do the class and that seemed too complicated. So you just need about a cup, probably maybe 2 cups of the old juice with your SCOBY. So when you take your SCOBY out, you're going to put it in a bowl and you're going to pour a little bit of the juice in there. And it doesn't have to be exact. You don't have to measure it. It's like a cup, 2 cups, somewhere in there. You're not going to get too much. The more you pour back in with her, the less you're going to have to do your second ferment with. So here's my container. I steeped my tea already. So what I did here, I boiled. Well, I didn't. I've been gone all day. My husband boiled because I needed it done this evening. My husband just boiled some water. It doesn't matter how much water you boil because it's all going to go in here and you're going to have to add water to it anyway. So I would say if you were doing a half a gallon, then you'd want to, this is when it might help to take notes. If you were doing a half a gallon of kombucha or Jun, then you're going to want to boil maybe a quart of water. And if you're doing a gallon, so it'd be about half. If you were doing a gallon, then you could still do a quart, but you could do a couple quart, half gallon if you wanted to. So I don't have any idea how much this is. This is probably maybe a couple quarts, but my tea has been steeping. I just boil the water, turn it off, and put my tea bags in. And then this is kind of the beauty of green tea versus black tea. If I did this with black tea, then I would need to take the tea bags out about 15 minutes into the process because otherwise it starts getting kind of bitter. With green tea, I'm using green tea because I'm making Jun. This has been sitting since 5 o'clock. He did this for me at 5 and then he let it sit. It doesn't matter. It could sit all day if you wanted it to, and it just doesn't matter. But it's just been sitting here. Now, with my but you do need to let it cool, but you don't want to let it get cold. Here's why. I need to mix my honey in here and I don't want to have to heat it back up. So for one, if you were doing a half a gallon of tea, then you want to do 3 tea bags. You want to use 3 green tea bags or black tea bags, and you'd want to use half a cup of honey. Okay, 3 tea bags and half a cup of honey. If you're doing a gallon, then it doubles. You've got 6 tea bags and a cup of honey. I just messed up because I forgot I was doing a gallon and a half. So I just did 1 cup of honey. So let me grab a little bit more honey because I need another half cup. So I'm going to do a cup and a half of honey because I'm doing a gallon and a half of tea.
Okay, I'm gonna put this in the chat. Half a gallon equals 3 tea bags plus a half a cup of honey.
Yes, that would be
Okay.
super. You'd be an awesome secretary. And a gallon, then it doubles, and then a gallon and a half, it would be a little more. So I use 9 bags with a gallon and a half, and I'd use 12 bags for 2 gallons, and it just kind of goes up from there. So what I did was this didn't cool all the way. It just sat for long enough because I don't want to heat my honey up too much, which would be part of the reason. If you don't want to heat your honey up a lot, then that would be a reason to leave your jars of fruit juice unsweetened and to sweeten them after. If you're using honey, for sure, because you don't really want, you want the benefits from the honey too. So I'm just stirring this in, letting the honey dissolve, and once it has dissolved, so far this is pretty easy, right? Once it's dissolved, then I'm going to grab my container here, and I think it's still in the video. And then this hasn't completely dissolved, but I don't want to wait a whole lot longer. It'll finish up in here. So I'm just going to pour this into my container. Yeah, it didn't dissolve great, but it will finish in here. Okay, so I poured that into my container. So this isn't near half by any means, but that really doesn't matter. All that matters is that you've brewed your tea, because it's going to get diluted exactly the same, whether you heated a bunch of water or didn't heat a bunch of water. So, all right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some room temperature water to this. So we'll just pour that in. And I'm going to fill it to about here. You have to estimate based on because you're going to put your SCOBY and your old, what you left of your old tea, you're going to put that back in there. So I'm filling this quite a ways. Do a little more. Okay. Now I'm going to put my SCOBY in. So I'll put her on top. Now, the beautiful thing about the SCOBY is she will grow to whatever size her container is. So she's not quite, I don't know if you can see this, she's not quite as wide, you'll see, as the container, but watch what happens when I fill this up, because she's been in here. We've made 2 other batches, I think, with her already. So as I finish filling this container up, there, now you can kind of see a little more water. She actually does fill up the container because I fill it all the way to this ledge, to this lip here, and she perfectly fills up that lid. It's just perfect how she fits in there. I just love that. So now she's been fed and she's happy because she's got some fresh honey in there, and she's going to sit for 1 week. What I started doing was I just made it just seemed easiest to make a day of Jun. So I make Jun typically on Fridays. I saved it out this time for the class, but typically I just make it every Friday. So it's easier to remember if you just do 1 day a week and make it the same day. Now, kombucha can take up to 10 days to be ready. If you like a lighter kombucha, if you want it to have a little bit less of that kombucha flavor, I'm not talking about the fizz, but I'm talking about the kombucha, then you could just do it for 7 days. You could do it every week. Temperature does definitely have some relevance here. So if your house is extra warm, then it will be ready a little faster. And if your house is cool, then it'll take just a little bit longer. Jun prefers a cooler room, and kombucha prefers a warmer. The kombucha prefers like 75 or 80 degrees, whereas Jun is perfectly happy being at 65 or 70. So, all right. So she's ready to go. And so now I need to cover her. The way that I cover her is I'll just grab some paper towels and rubber bands. Just like that. Just like I do just about everything else. My kefir, water kefir, and my sourdough, all the things. So now she's ready and she sits for a week. So this is your first ferment. This is what's actually turning it into Jun or kombucha. Now, I've often wondered, I don't taste mine. We just let it sit for a week and we drink it. And there's nothing wrong with that system. If you felt like you wanted your flavor to be a little bit stronger, then you could make it and then try it. And if it wasn't quite strong enough, just let it sit for another couple days. If it's too strong, then just let it sit for a few less days. Jun is way more forgiving in this regard than kombucha is. Kombucha does definitely kind of strengthen its flavor over time, whereas Jun, really, it's just amazing no matter when you drink it. That's how I feel about it. So this is how you do the first ferment. Does this part make sense before I move on? If you guys had just put in the chat, if a couple of you say it makes sense, then I'm going to know we can just go ahead and move on to the next thing. Oh, I do not know how you did that, but somebody is giving a thumbs up. Wow, that's really cool. I have no idea, but there it is. That's what I want to talk about next, Mike, is adding the flavors and stuff. But first, I want to make sure that everyone has this process down. So this is your first ferment. So, okay, everyone's got it. All right. So let's pretend that this is now been sitting for a week. Okay. So now I'm ready to make my second, we're ready to do the second ferment. I'm not going to go through the process of actually taking my SCOBY out because I just put her in there and I don't want to, I want to leave this to be a good batch. So, but it's really easy to explain. So I would take this off, obviously, and I'd take the SCOBY out. Remember, we talked about this. We take the SCOBY out and we take a cup or 2 of the tea that's in here and put it in a separate container. You can let that sit for a day or 2 if you want to. You can even let it sit for longer and put it in the refrigerator, and she will last for maybe even up to a month. But you want to keep an eye on it because if you lose your SCOBY, that can't be salvaged. So you'll have to find someone else with a new SCOBY, and especially with a Jun SCOBY, once you have one, they're pretty hard to find. So starting over is a really lengthy process. So, but you can just put her in the fridge, make sure she's good, and all will be well. So makes sense so far. Where can we get a SCOBY and juice to start? Okay, hold on, and I'll answer that question, Susan. That was a good question. Where are we getting the extra Jun liquid? Okay, so it's right in here. So what here, let me go ahead and take this lid off. What I would do when it's time, so she's been sitting for a week now, we're fast forwarding. I'm just going to take the SCOBY out and put it in here. And I'm going to also take 2 cups of the liquid that's in here and put it in here with her. Now, if you only did a half a gallon, then you're going to take out not even a cup. You might take out like half a cup, 3/4 of a cup, because your SCOBY is going to be much smaller. But she has to have enough liquid to start the next ferment. So does that answer your question on where you get the juice for it? I hope so. So, okay, so here she is. She's been sitting for a week. And you can use the SCOBYs. I would just ask around and see. You can ask on, we have a new group. I would love to invite you to join this group. It's called Alaska Farm Direct. And it is a group specifically for connecting farmers and producers. So it could be someone who makes SCOBYs or sourdough or whatever, but it's Alaska Farm Direct, and it is a way to connect folks with their producers. So if you want to join that group, and we can have a SCOBY and Jun, Jun's going to take a little bit. Sorry, she's stuck to the counter. So, but you can definitely, kombucha SCOBYs really are easy to come by, and because we have people from Anchorage and Palmer and all over, I would really ask on there or on Alaska Farm and Food and see who has a SCOBY that they'd be willing to give you or share with you. Sometimes people might charge a couple dollars for one, and then you can find someone who's close to you. Okay, let's see. How do you know if your SCOBY is good? Since I started from scratch, when I pull it out, it's so thin it folds on itself. Only made 3 batches so far. Okay. Kristen, don't let me forget that question. I want to finish this part, and then I want to answer that question because it's super, super important. So, all right. So now imagine that, oops, I guess I need this back. Imagine that this now has no SCOBY in it because I put it in a separate bowl, and it has a couple cups, in this case, less liquid. So now I'm going to need to get out my bottles. Okay. And you want to make sure I don't keep my bottles closed tight, clamped down. I just keep them with the top on them so nothing can get in them, because we just keep them really clean. But anytime I'm going to use these, I definitely rinse them with super hot water. As with the other fermented type things, should we avoid using? Yes, no metals, please, no metals. Yes, that was an awesome question, Emma. No metal at all whatsoever in this process. So, which is why, actually, this is my, I don't know what I did with it. Oh, here it is. Here's my lid for this container. And I just set it on top, but I have otherwise I'd have a nice lid for the container, but the lid is metal, even though some of the plastic is on the inside. I don't want this touching. So I just set it on top of the paper towel. So it's really just, it's aerating. It's able to aerate. Okay. Now it's time for the second ferment. This is when it gets fun. This is when you get to add your flavors. As someone asked, where to get the SCOBY. So I answered that question. They also asked where to get the juice. You can use any juice you want to. You can we buy juice from Azure Standard. So you might use some juice from there. You can use juice from the grocery store. This one here and this one here that we made this week. This one is pear. And it just was made from I got it from Azure Standard, from some pear juice that I got from Azure Standard. Here, let me grab it. I like to get juice out of a glass bottle. So we try to always order our juices from Azure Standard. And this is just pear juice that I use for this one. This one here, I used a bunch of the cherry juice, but I didn't have quite enough. So I had some leftover pineapple juice. So I added pineapple two here too. So it's cherry and pineapple. So you can use, my pineapple juice was obviously not from my garden. So, it's just store-bought juice. Where do you get the bottles with the balls? The bottles we get from, that's a great question. Let me finish this. Mike, don't let me forget that question because I want to address that and I want to address Kristen's question too. Let me finish this process and then I will tell you because that's an important question. So what I do is I fill them, I totally eyeball this. So let's pretend I'm using black currant because black currant makes the world's greatest Jun. You guys, here's your $1 million marketing idea. Make black currant Jun and sell it across the world. And it's so good. It's so good. So when I make this, I have to heat it up and we'll either add sugar or honey. It takes about a cup. So for 2 cups, this is a pint. So I've got 2 cups of juice. It takes about a cup of sweetener. And then I'll just line up my bottles on the counter. I think you can see this. Yeah. Line up my bottles on the counter. And I just start filling them, but I have to kind of guess based on what I have available, based on how much I've made. So I fill them between 1/4 and 1/3. There probably is a formula. I don't use a formula. My husband says I'm very ish. So I fill them up about this far with my juice. So if I were using an empty bottle, I'd fill it up. I'm going to say that's between 1/4 and 1/3 right there. I try to make them pretty even just so they'll ferment the same. So I fill them about that much with juice. And then once they all have juice in them, then I finish filling them with the Jun. And I go right up to the neck on every one of them. Every one of them is filled up to the neck. And then I just put the cap on like this and let them sit. And they sit on the counter for about a day, and between a day and a half and 3 to 4 days. It does depend a little bit on how warm your house is. It also depends on how much sugar you've used. The more sugar you put in there, the faster it'll ferment. The good thing is that your ferment is eating a lot of that sugar, so you're not having like a high sugar juice type thing, your drink, because a lot of your sugar has been eaten by the Jun. Okay. Yes, Amazon has bottles, but I want to talk about that for just a second. The new group was Alaska Farm Direct. Alaska Farm Direct is the new group. And we're just it's just a free group for everybody to join, but I just am trying to make a way so people can connect with their food, with local food without all the other chatter. So it's purely just to find local food. So, all right. So you filled it about 1/3 with your juice. You fill it, and you don't have to sweeten I don't know where I put it, your store-bought juices. They're already sweetened. So you just would need to add sweetener to anything that you've juiced on your own that doesn't have sweetener in it. So you fill it about 1/3 and you finish. And then I'm going to attempt to open one of these. We might have, I don't know if any of you were there for we had quite an explosion at one of our classes when I opened one of these bottles. So if that happens again, you'll hear some screaming, but I want you to see how and I'm going to do it over here because I don't want it to get on my computer. So, but I want you to see how fizzy this stuff gets because it's incredible. Oh, thank you, Emma, for posting that. All right. And it may not do anything. We may be like, oh, well, that's boring. I hate doing this. Jean usually opens them for me because I don't like to. Sometimes they really poof. Oh, there you go. See, that was pretty good. And look at all the fizz coming up in it. I mean, that's pretty cool. We made that fizz. These are cherry, and it's juice from our cherries from the farm. And like I said, I just steam juiced them. But look, it's still just going like crazy, fizzing like crazy. So this is gonna be a really nice fizzy one. After you have gotten them to the point that they have the fizz that you like, be sure you store them in the fridge. These bottles will explode. So make sure that you put them in the fridge to slow that fermentation down for sure. Or you can burp them a couple times a day too, and that will help. 2 questions. Kristen, I want to answer your question, but I can't remember what it was. So I'm going to answer Mike's question first. I want to show you something that we've learned. I don't have any science on this. This is just purely from experience. Actually, I'm going to show you side by side. This is a bottle that I got off of Amazon. And if you can see, it doesn't have a lot of taper. It kind of slowly tapers up. These bottles ferment way slower than these ones that have, I don't know, like a harsher neck. I thought that at first that was what was going on. And then we've been watching, and sure enough, it does. These ones that have a more curved neck definitely ferment faster. So I wanted to mention that because if you're buying your bottles off of Amazon, they're more this kind of streamlined shape, and they will take a little longer to ferment. I was a little disappointed in that. So now I'm definitely trying to find the bottles with greater curve for sure. So that was that question. And then let me scroll back to Kristen's question. Just keep sticking to the counter. Kristen, how do you know if your SCOBY is good? That's right. Okay. When I made this SCOBY, here's what I had to do. Kristen, I'm curious, is yours a Jun SCOBY too, or is it kombucha? You have to make several batches that you just keep pouring out because it's kombucha. Okay. Because your SCOBY is not strong enough to it won't hurt you to drink it, but it's just not going to be a full on kombucha. And you have to change it out a little more often. So when I first made this SCOBY, I needed to get it so that there was, a medallion worth of mother, right, up at the top. And then after that, I just did, trying to remember, I might have even done a couple of pint containers with her and gave her a little extra sugar and changed, or honey, and changed it out regularly, but those were more, we didn't keep those. I just kind of dumped them and kept doing that. And what it did was it just helped her to grow better and faster. And then once she'd grown enough, then we could start focusing on making the kombucha, or the Jun. But at the beginning, you really are just kind of, gently taking it out and feeding it more. The other thing that you can actually do, you have to do it really carefully, but if you don't want to keep taking it out, because they're kind of fragile at first, right? So you can actually very gently pour off some of your water and sorry, someone coming in. You can gently pour off some of your water and then pour some in around her that has the tea and the sugar, or the tea and the honey in it, so that you can, so you don't have to manhandle it as much when it's brand new. Does that answer your question, Kristen? Does that help you? I do want to invite you to, we are doing a full-on fermenting class. We're going to talk about water kefir. We're going to talk about milk kefir. We're going to talk about making kvass out of beets, which is incredible. So instead of a week for the first ferment, you were just doing it every few days at first. Yeah. And we weren't even drinking the tea. I wasn't even trying to make anything out of it. It was just more doing what I needed to do. But we have this class that's coming up. It's on the 17th, and we're also going to be talking about fermenting lacto-fermented vegetables. So one thing that's amazing about Alaska, but the learning curve was huge, is, we grow amazing cabbage, we grow amazing carrots, we grow incredible onions, and, carrots and onions can save okay, but what in the world are you going to do with all that cabbage, right? I know you can freeze it. There's a few things you can do, but the best thing that you can do is to make a lacto ferment. And we've nutritionally, it's way better for you than if just eating it plain. But the other thing is, the thing that I kind of want to major on is that any palate can enjoy a lacto fermented vegetable. They don't have to be really strong. It certainly doesn't have to taste like sauerkraut, because I don't like sauerkraut and I love our lacto ferment. So We're just going to go over all of those things. And so it's just this great form of food preservation. So the link to that is on our website, commongroundalaska.com, and you go under shop and then there's classes and that's how you can get there. So, but I'd love to have you at that fermenting class. I've got some things we're going to be given to you to kind of get started on fermenting. We'll have some scobies there. It's actually the cool thing about the fermenting classes, it's actually taking place at Booch. So, which is a kombucha bar in Wasilla. And so he's actually going to be talking a little bit about kombucha from his perspective too, which is super cool because he does it for a living, right? So, so we're going to get kind of a behind the scenes look at what kombucha can be if you want to go big. So, you're invited to that, but I hope that this answered your questions. And if anyone has any questions at all whatsoever, you can always email me, you can text me, you can reach out on Facebook, whatever's easier, but I just want to see you be successful for sure. All right. Put it in the fridge after how many days? So Mike, usually probably 2 days, but what you can do is you can open it and see if it's fermented to your liking. If the top pops off and goes flying, then it's probably plenty fermented and it's a good thing you burped it and it needs to go in the fridge. But sometimes it'll just kind of be like a little fizz. And so if it's not enough fizz for you, just put the top back on, leave it for another half a day or another full day and try it again until it's to your liking. So also, oops. Also, do you have any written instructions on this process? No, I need to make a blog post about this, but I wanted to do the class first really quick and see, kind of walk through the process. It's all in my head, so I wanted to walk through the process first, but I'll get a blog post up at some point. I tried to do the second ferment with the second batch of my Jun and Gale, didn't fizz at all. I also tried to pour around the SCOBY, and when I put the new liquid back in whoops, she sunk. Oh, and didn't raise back up. No, you didn't kill her. No, I was just dealing with this. So it's okay if she floats to the bottom. And what's going to happen is she's at there. You're actually going to get a new one to form at the top. Hopefully, that's the hope. So, but what I probably would do if it was me is I just put it in a new container, take her out, put her at the top, and like with all new, give her some new sugar or new honey and everything and tea, and just kind of start her over again. So she and just lay her at the top. And maybe if it was me, I'd probably put it actually in a shallow container so she doesn't have much to float. She's just a baby. She's just brand new. And, you know, we call her a mother, but she's really not ready to be a mother yet. So, and it's probably not fermenting, Gail, either because there wasn't enough sugar in your juice or it's just not ready. It's not, you haven't actually made Jun. You've made like a very, very, very watered down version of Jun just simply because she's not big enough to do her job of turning your drink into anything but sugar, tea, water. Does that help? I can get a kombucha SCOBY, but would like to know how to make a Jun SCOBY to know where to get one. Well, like I said, I don't have extra at this point, but eventually we probably will. I bought my bottle of Jun to start the SCOBY at Fred Meyer. This has been a while. So someone said that actually Safeway, or what's it called up here? Whatever. Cars, that they actually carry some too. And you can make a SCOBY from that. I don't have time to go over all of that, but I just Googled it and I found, can't remember the name of the website, but I just followed their instructions. It took 3 tries. The third one took, and now I'm treasuring her so much. But so, you know, I'd say by the end of summer, we'll have some Jun SCOBY to share too. Yeah, but it's just slow. It's a slow process. And good, Gail, I'm glad you feel better. And if you killed her, there's more. We'll get you some more. So, does that answer everyone's questions? Does anyone need anything else? I'd love to kind of respect your time and make sure that we close this at a good time, but I also want to make sure okay, so my final question to you is this. Do you feel like this process is fairly simple. And if you had it written, would it feel better? And do you feel like you can make kombucha and Jun now? That's what I'm more going for, is I want you to feel equipped to be able to make this on your own, and know that if you have any questions, you can reach out to me for sure. And so I hope that you're encouraged, and I hope that you feel like you can do this and would feel much better with written instructions. Yeah, that's fine. I will try to get to that, and hopefully the notes that you took will help you at least get started too. Yes, with written instructions and pictures. All right, I will do my best. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. This was a great class. It was really fun to have you. I'm excited, and I want to hear your success stories. I just did a sourdough class last weekend, and somebody just showed me a picture of Myrtle's baby loaf. So that's really fun. And Myrtle is what she named her sourdough starter, which is also the name of our dog, which was very special. But anyway, so I want to see your success stories. So definitely, yeah, good job. And let me know how it goes. Thank you so much, everyone. Goodbye.